Hey everybody, I'm Russell Graves and welcome to the barn at Hackberry Farm here in Dodge City, Texas. And on today's episode of What Makes This Picture Memorable, we're going to talk about a picture I took just a couple of years ago. Now in my mind, it's a pretty nice shot, but more importantly, it helped me win a good-natured bet that I had with one of my workshop participants. So let's take a look at the picture and let's talk about it. Hey, if you like these videos, do me a favor and like and subscribe and leave me a comment below. It really helps me out, helps me grow this channel, and helps me bring you guys more and more valid educational content when it comes to nature photography. A couple of years ago, I was doing a photography workshop in the Florida Everglades, and one of the toughest pictures to get down there is a good picture of a dolphin. And so that's what I'm going to show you today. We'd been out in a boat for a while and we were headed back in. The sun was going down when all this magic took place. So let's take a look at the picture. Let's get into the details of it, the nuts and bolts and the technical aspect of it, and why I think what makes this picture memorable, number one, but number two, kind of, you know, what the story is behind the picture, and again, for me, what makes it so memorable. So here we go. This is the picture that I call the world's greatest dolphin picture. And I say that facetiously just because, again, I had a good-natured bet with the workshop participant, because the workshop right before this, we were trying to take pictures of dolphins, and he said, you'll never get a picture of one where you can see his eye, because we were struggling before. We'd see their fins and take pictures of their fins, and when they jump out of the water, it'd be so quick and so unpredictable, we just couldn't get it. So I call this the world's greatest dolphin picture because, number one, not only did I get a picture of his eye, number two, all of my photographic expertise came into play to shoot this shot. And number three, I shot it with a 24mm lens. And so let's start with the story of this picture. We were on a workshop. We've been photographing birds out in the 10,000 island area of the Everglades National Park. And sun was starting to go down, so we were making our way back to the dock to be finished for the evening. We'd seen a lot of birds that day. It was a beautiful February evening. The water was warm, the air was warm. We were heading back in. And usually on these boat trips, everyone else gets the good seats. So all my guests, they get all the good seats up front. And me, I usually ride in the back. Now, the ride in the back inherently is not the best seat because, number one, whenever you hit a wake or something else or a little bit of a wave, that if anybody's going to get wet on the boat, it's usually me. So I've got to be real mindful of not getting salt water on my camera, not getting water period on my camera, but really trying to pay attention to what's going on around me. We had just seen a dolphin surface in front of us, but we were headed steadily back to the dock when I was talking to the captain who was driving the boat. He was in front of me because, again, I'm at the very back of the boat. And then all of a sudden I hear a splash right behind me, and when I turn around and look, there's a dolphin jumping in our wake just literally right behind the boat. So with that said, I jumped into action. I already had my 24 to 105mm lens on my camera because at that time of the day it got a little dark for trying to shoot pictures of birds in flight or wildlife. And so I just opted to doing some landscape pictures of the islands and the sun and the water, and really kind of relegated myself to shooting stuff like that whenever we would stop. A lot of us drive-by shooting when you're doing the landscapes like that because we're going slow through the water. When that dolphin jumped and I turned around and looked and saw what was behind us, I already had the right lens in place for it and I was ready to spring into action. And so from there, I got everything set up. Now, the dolphin hadn't jumped back up again, but one of the things I knew I was going to have a little bit of a challenge was we had a bright sunlight in the background because the sun's setting. So while I was waiting for the dolphin to jump again, I got all my settings right. And so I knew, and I took a couple of test shots before I shot this picture, I knew the exposure was going to be a challenge because we've got a bright sky behind us, which is going to make everything go silhouette. We had these bright highlights off the water if it was going to splash again. And you just had a lot of reflectivity in this shot. And so I took a couple of test shots and then I opted to barely overexposed by about a third of a stop, because I surmised in post-processing I can always make everything go darker again. But what I was wanting to try to do, since the star of my show was going to be this dolphin, if he jumped again and how he jumped again, and I didn't know what that was going to look like, so it was all kind of a guess. So I just pointed my camera at the scene, took advantage of what the camera told me, and then dialed in a third of a stop of overexposure using the exposure compensation. And so then it was a matter of waiting. The second thing I thought is, because I knew when the dolphin jumped, if I was shooting from a higher angle, the dolphin would get lost in the water below it because they're similar in color. And so I needed to shoot a little bit lower angle. So I got right down on the edge of the boat and tried to shoot at least at an eye level or upward angle as I could. And then it was a matter of waiting. And so a couple of jumps, the dolphin would just kind of breach the surface and show its fin. But on one occasion, and one occasion only, the dolphin completely jumped out of the water, and at that point I had my camera set. I went through the mental checklist in my mind about making sure that the exposure was right. I had my camera set up right. You know, it was on it was set at a high frame rate, so when on burst mode, so when it did jump out, I could shoot a lot of pictures, and hopefully I got lucky. But one of the things though that you may not realize is I turned the autofocus off on this one. And the reason why I turned the autofocus off is because every point of contrast on the eye tracking focus on these mirrorless cameras, the camera would try to pick up on, like that point of contrast with the fin in the water, or the island in the water, or the island in the sky, or the water back here. And so it was going to be, to me, in my mind, it was going to be too confusing for the camera to be able to nail the focus on this. So I turned the autofocus off and then manually focused to a point where I'd seen the dolphin kind of jumping out before. Now, with the wide angle lens, you've got some latitude. I mean, if you set this, if you set your lens right and you focus at a point, you'll get a hyperfocal distance. Whereas you can see here, almost everything from the dolphin in the foreground to the island in the background looks in focus. And I can't remember my exact settings on this. Let me look and see if I can see it. On the metadata, it doesn't show it on this because I've exported that picture since then. I'll include that metadata in a title below so you can see it. But I knew by manually focusing, I would be able to get it in focus, and paying attention to my shutter speed, paying attention to my ISO, making sure I had a fast enough shutter speed. So I went through a mental checklist of all of those things just to make sure I had it right. Again, I had my camera set at a high frame rate. I had my ISO right so I get a fast enough shutter speed. I had my aperture set right because I was shooting in manual focus, and if I set my aperture to a certain point, I knew a lot of that would be in focus and I'd get the focus right. And then it was just a matter of waiting for the dolphin to show up and take pictures. Now, these mental checklists, you can make them as you go. You can put them on your phone as a physical checklist, but one of the things you'll learn is over time, the more and more pictures you take, the more and more it becomes muscle memory. Now look, most of the ways I take pictures are uncomplicated. I kind of do the same thing each and every time over and over again. But experience has taught me if you'll check those things, the basic settings of your camera before you're ready to go, it'll put the odds in your favor that you're going to be able to capture a picture when the moment happens like this.